Hello and welcome to Freedom from Fear, a German New Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Ashlee Newberry.
And I'm your other host, Abigail Puccioni. Please be aware that nothing discussed here on this podcast should be taken as medical advice.
Consult your trusted professionals and your own inner knowing before making any health decisions. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Freedom from Fear, episode 5. And today we will be exploring the overarching what the heck is German New Medicine and getting into a little bit of Dr. Hammer's history and how he came to discover the 5 biological laws and what we are using them for today.
Yeah, so a lot of people, when they first hear the word, German New Medicine or GNM, or the abbreviation for it, they're like, what the heck is that? What are you talking about? What kind of branch of medicine is this? And I think, the name can be a little confusing and kind of misleading for people, right? Because it's really, it really has nothing to do with Germany, other than the fact that Dr. Hammer, the guy who, discovered these principles, is from Germany. And, he first called it the new medicine, but then there were other people, having their own versions of, things that they would coin the new medicine. And so he used the word German in front of it to distinguish, what he was talking about. And then, of course, other people have different, ways of saying GNM or German New Medicine. Like I know in Germany, it's called Germanische Heilkunde. And so it's also called, I believe, GHK, like the Germanic Healing Knowledge. So this goes by several different names. And I honestly like Germanic Healing Knowledge because I feel like that's a bit more of an accurate representation as far as, the healing knowledge, right? This is not a new medicine. This is a very, this has been around always. This is just the, reality of how and why our bodies adapt, why we have symptoms, why we have disease. This is answering the question why. This is not a modality. This is, really just a framework for understanding the deeper why. And so that's where I kind of like the, Germanic healing knowledge. I know some people also call it the Germanic healing framework. Of course, the German part's a nod to Dr. Hammer, who discovered it. And I like to kind of describe the backstory on that just a bit, because I know people can get really thrown off with like, what are you talking about? So I will say that, also it has really nothing to do with, obviously the conventional medicine industry. This is, what Dr. Hammer envisioned as the new medicine and how to help people understand the reality and really the beautiful, innate intelligence of our bodies and the how and why behind, symptoms and disease. And so I know Ashlee and I both feel, very strongly about this, that when we discovered, GNM, it was just kind of like a million light bulbs went off. Everything just kind of fell into place. And like the why, the unanswered questions that we had from both the conventional and holistic, realms, we finally had answers to our questions of, the underlying why of, why we have symptoms and disease, why, one person develops, ovarian cancer and another person develops, chronic autoimmune issues, right? So anyway, we choose to use German New Medicine simply because that's what's most popular here in the United States. So we've just decided to go with that for the sake of simplicity. But know that, it really is simply a paradigm, a framework for understanding the how and why of, our body's adaptations and, symptoms and disease. So, when we say GNM, that's going to be short for German New Medicine. But I just
love our acronyms.
Also, right. Yeah, we love our acronyms, right? GNM. So I know some people are like, what's GNM? And so that's why we wanted to go into that just a little bit. But yeah, about Dr. Hammer, the guy who discovered, or rather, I would say discovered these, principles. He was born in 1935, and he studied medicine, physics, theology. He had degrees in all those things, and he became a practicing, physician. He worked in an internal medicine unit at a hospital in Germany, and also his wife was a physician as well. So a very conventional medicine-oriented family. And I won't get into all the specifics of, his story and all of that, because I want to get right to the point and explain this hopefully in as succinct of a way as possible. But essentially, his son was in a tragic accident and was unexpectedly shot by a person who was, in kind of a powerful position. It was an accident, but essentially this person was not taking responsibility and was denying it. And it was this whole legal thing. And it was, it was really a messy situation. And basically, though, his son, Dirk Hammer, who was shot, he ended up having 19 different emergency operations, but he still ended up passing away, sadly. And so Dr. Hammer was actually holding his son Dirk in his arms when he passed away. And that was obviously, as you can imagine, for a parent, watching their son go through that horrific event and, going through all those emergency operations. That was a horribly tragic event. And so 2 months after that, he was actually diagnosed with testicular cancer.
And after he got this diagnosis, Dr. Hammer started to reflect and look at why he had this diagnosis. And overall, he was a pretty healthy guy, took care of himself, not only physically, but in every other way. He didn't have a lot of, he was good at taking care of himself and didn't really have a lot of issues. And so he started to ask the question, okay, why did I get testicular cancer? And so he was still working as an internal medicine doctor, and he started talking to his patients and asking all of his testicular patients, what happened before you had this diagnosis? And the hundreds of patients that he interviewed, there was this pattern of something profoundly tragic, and this loss that had happened within a very specific time period before their diagnosis. And so, again, he was very curious. And so he started to ask his female patients that had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, what happened before your diagnosis? And he found the same thing, that with the women that had ovarian cancer, they had experienced a profound loss, something shocking, within a certain amount of time before the ovarian cancer diagnosis. And he was like, okay, maybe there's something here, right? And he had a CT scan of his own brain, and then started doing CTs of all the testicular and ovarian cancer patients that he had, and was noticing in the brain that there was this ring, and it's called a Hammer focus. And so there was this ring in the brain that showed up on the CT scans. And for his own CT scan, he had like an old one, and so he noticed there was a difference. And so he started putting the pieces together, and everyone that had testicular cancer had the ring in the same place, and everyone that had ovarian cancer had the ring in the same place on their CT scans. And so again, he was like, maybe there's something to this. And he started to map out. He started with cancer and then went on to map out this beautiful, specific way of understanding disease and symptoms, and tied in the brain involvement, the psyche, and whatever organ in the body was affected of every single disease and symptom, and put together, what we would call German New Medicine, which is like a map of what's going on with the body. And it is very different from anything else, and it's not a modality, which Abigail will touch on in a minute. But it's this very sensical and predictable way of understanding, okay, what's going on with my symptoms, what's going on with my body. And so you can let go of the fear of having any of these symptoms. And German New Medicine, like many other you can heal yourself perspectives on healing and the body, was suppressed. And Dr. Hammer, tried to bring it to multiple universities for, hey, look at my findings. This is what I found. And actually was offered money to stop researching and to, essentially let it go and move on with his life. But he said no. He was like, no, I'm not doing that. And he kept going. And, if you think about big pharma and the medical system and all of these ways that these businesses make money, that bringing in some different kind of, study, or, hey, maybe we don't need these things, like they would lose a lot of money. And it's also really hard to change your mind, right?
Yeah.
And to leave behind everything because there's this new thing that makes a lot more sense and actually gives you your power back is quite challenging for most people. And especially if you've been in a certain system for a long time and you're indoctrinated, right? And
Right.
so
And I think, all this goes
yeah.
back to the personal power too. Like,
Yeah.
when they can keep you in fear and reliant on, for the medical system, for example, or, the government or whatever it is, like they can better control you. And so I think that that's also a really big piece of this is, a lot of, and of course this gets tied in with money too, and making, profit and running businesses, is you want to keep people in fear and thinking that their bodies are just messing up and they need all the interventions. And, by the way, like Dr. Hammer was definitely not against medical interventions, because I know that his vision was to actually have, G&M as the framework, for understanding things, but to have that in hospital systems, to have doctors that knew G&M, and nurses and surgeons, because people will need interventions. And I know Ashlee and I are definitely not, totally against the medical industry or anything like that. But what Dr. Hammer was, he was bringing his findings to people, and it would have really revolutionized the medical system, but not done away with it, which I think is, a big distinction.
Yeah, exactly. And right, there is sometimes a time and a place for those interventions, maybe a lot less than we've been taught to believe. But sometimes it is necessary. And within the framework of understanding of German New Medicine, it can actually be really helpful because you're supporting your body rather than trying to go against the healing symptoms. And so he actually had over 50,000 case studies going back to the brain scans and the symptomology of cancer patients and other diseases. And so every time with all of these case studies, all these patients, he found that everyone that had the testicular cancer had the ring in the brain in the same spot and had the similar flavor of conflict shock before the diagnosis. And same with ovarian cancer and every other symptom. And there was this beautiful way that it all made sense. And it just fit together, right? The puzzle pieces fit together and it made sense. And it was predictable and not random. And it's not that your body is making a mistake or something's wrong, but it's actually this beautiful adaptation that the body's doing to help you deal with that shocking event, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's also pretty incredible that out of 50,000 case studies over the course of his life, um, there was not a single exception to what, he was finding as far as, the specific type of conflict shock that relates to the specific type of
Yep.
symptom or, whatever's diagnosed as disease. And, for there not to be a single exception, I mean, come on, that's pretty, it's pretty impressive. And, you don't have to take our word for this either.
Yeah.
And we really want to emphasize this. Like, you get to be the detective in your own life. You get to ask the questions and dig deeper and question us, question the system, question, whatever you've been told, right? And you have to see if, does this make sense in my life? Look
Yep.
at diagnoses you've had, look at symptoms that you have, learn GNM and apply it to your life and see if it makes sense to you. And I
Yep.
think that that's really our biggest message. We don't want anyone to just, believe us, or, take our word for it, right? Like we want you to actually make sense of this in your own life. And that's what we're, so incredibly passionate about. So also, this is a very different paradigm, right? It's a huge paradigm shift away from both conventional medicine and even the holistic health, realm. And so we also, want to touch on this, like how, because I think a lot of people group GNM in with like other holistic stuff or other like mind body stuff, like the idea that, oh, repressed trapped emotions cause, specific types of like, oh, anger causes liver issues, or, I know that there are other kind of ways of thinking out there that kind of
Yep.
fall into this general category. But GNM is actually, pretty different because I know also, a lot of times, even with conventional medicine, though, they agree that, trauma, people who have had significant traumatic events in their life are more likely to experience, certain types of diseases, health issues, et cetera. And also, in convention or in the holistic health, world, there's also a lot of emphasis on, oh, well, stress reduction, and you have to, work through your past traumas, and you have to, release trapped emotions, and, all of this stuff that kind of gets thrown together. I feel like usually it's a bit of an afterthought, but, they notice that there's a connection, right? Like people
Yeah.
know that there is a connection between stress and negative feelings and, traumatic events. But with GNM, that's not necessarily the case, and we'll get into this in our next episode, but we're talking about a biological conflict shock. We're not just talking about bad emotions. We're not just talking about stress, having a stressful job or whatever. It has to be something specific that caught you off guard, that, created a biological conflict shock. And what I mean by that is that your body, from a very primal perspective, your tissues are adapting in a certain area of your body to help you essentially with survival is what it goes down to.
Yep.
But and we'll get into this, like I said, more in the next episode. But yeah, I think it's really important to note that this is very different than other ways of thinking about just kind of, trauma and stress. Because again, say if 3 people experience the same traumatic event, one person develops ovarian cancer, another person develops skin issues, rashes, and another person develops nothing, right? And it's totally fine, doesn't have any chronic health issues. Okay, well, why? And with GNM, the answer to that is going to lie in the perception of the individual, which again, we'll get more into this. And, also in our episodes 2 and 3, called Questioning Your Health Paradigm, we talk a lot more about this, about the differences and similarities between the conventional medicine paradigm, the holistic health paradigm, and then German New Medicine. So definitely check those out if you have not already given those a listen, because we go into much more detail about that over there. And yeah, and then our next episode is going to be all about the 5 biological laws, and we're going to explain each of the biological laws. We're going to break them down in hopefully a very easy to understand, digestible way. And yeah, that's going to be a really great episode, though, if you're interested in learning more about GNM and, how to start applying it to your life and, wanting to learn the basics.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening today and taking the time to open your mind and maybe see things differently than you have so far. And we hope to have you listen to our next episodes and go follow us on Spotify, and we will see you soon.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. We appreciate you being here.
If you would like some additional support in navigating your health symptoms, we both provide coaching services from a German New Medicine perspective.
Our Instagram handles and personal websites are linked in the podcast description.